Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Superannuated Starman. I am your host, Sean Ryan, and back with me as always is Chris Duerksen. How you doing, Chris?
I'm wonderful. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's December. It's the end of the year. Christmas is coming up, and so is my birthday. And I'm really looking forward to that.
Big party.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we have a very special guest this week. We have with us Cory. Cory, how you doing?
Good, thanks for having me.
And thank you for being here. So this week we're going to be talking about Star Fox. And before we go ahead, I'm going to give a brief history of the game, and then we're going to discuss our childhood memories of it. So, discussing Star Fox, also known as Starwing or the Lilac Wars in the PAL territories, it was released on March 26th of 1993. It was Nintendo's first game to use polygonal graphics, accomplished by the Super FX chip, and it went on to sell over 4 million copies. The game was developed by Argonaut Software, who developed a prototype of the game on the NES in a polygonal style, which was later ported to the SNES. Programmer Jez San told Nintendo that this was as good as it could get unless they were allowed to design custom hardware, hence the birth of the Super FX chip. Programming was handled by Argonaut Software, while the main game design was done by Shigeru Miyamoto and Katsuya Iguchi. Characters were designed by Takaya Imura, and music was composed by Hajime Hirasawa. And my apologies for butchering any of those names. The game takes place in the Lilac system. Andros, an evil enemy scientist, fled to the planet Venom after being banished from planet Corneria, and later declaring war. General Pepper dispatched an elite mercenary team codenamed Star Fox, led by Fox McCloud, alongside Falco Lombardi, Peppy Hare, and Slippy Toad to travel to Venom and defeat the evil Andros. Chris, if you would, will you start us off with your memories and what experiences you had as a child with Star Fox?
Sure. This was a game that we got as a family gift to all the kids. I have no idea what year, but I'm sure fairly soon after it came out. And my main memory of this was the same year that we got this game. My little brother also, as part of one of his Christmas presents, was the gift of getting signed up for karate class or some sort of karate class. And I remember after opening all the presents and stuff, I was like, oh, sweet, I'm going to go downstairs and play Star Fox. But I put the game in, and this was, like I said, early days where we still had the TV was on the floor, and there was a little screen, and the Super Nintendo was on the floor in front of it. And I was sitting on the floor, just loaded up Star Fox, was watching the intro or whatever. And my little brother Jordan just came up out of nowhere, just running up and did like a flying kick to the side of my head because he was so excited about getting in karate. So that's every time I start up Star Fox, I think of getting kicked in the head by Jordan. So besides that,
that's not a great memory.
No, he was little, and I mean I was little too, but I mean like. And it was like getting hit with a wiffle bat, like the surprise was what made me angry more than, like I didn't get hurt or anything. But I just thought, I don't know, that's totally Jordan. But as far as playing the game, it was one of the games, it was kind of new compared to all the other games I was playing for Nintendo and Super Nintendo, because most of the games I was playing were platformer games. And this one was definitely not. I remember a big difference between I played Mario Kart and other little racing games and stuff like that, but those were, I can't remember. Sean, what's the word for it? Or where Mario was always in the middle of the screen and the screen moved around him. That the Super 8 system or something like that. I can't remember.
So, if you're talking about like F-Zero, it was the Mode 7.
Yeah, Mode 7. Yeah, where your character was always in the middle of the screen, for like a racing game. So it still felt like you were moving forward, but really, your character was locked in the middle of the screen, and the rest of the screen was moving around your character. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this game, even as a little kid, I noticed like your ship is bouncing around, and you have that. They did a really good job of capturing that feeling of trying to squeeze into tight little spaces, and those oh shoot moments where you know that you're going to hit something and you can't get out of the way. And this game was this totally different than all the other games that I played before, and it also the characters were talking animals, which is kind of cartoony and fun. But the rest of the graphics and everything, I mean, they were all pretty simple, clean graphics where, like polygons and stuff, where they weren't cartoony at all. It was just very clean graphics, very cool. It was a very, I don't know, just a very clean looking game, and it wasn't really that cartoony, despite the fact that you were a talking fox, but it was just totally different than all the other games I was playing. And the difficulty was actually this game was totally playable. It wasn't super hard, but it was hard enough to be enjoyable, if that makes sense. And yeah, I just remember playing this game. Like, this was one of the games that I've played and beaten, dozens of times. So, and it's a short game too.
Do you remember as a kid which path you normally took? Did you take the middle one, or did you go up or down?
I normally always took the highest up path, which I always assumed that was the easiest path, but I just recently found out that's actually the normal mode compared, and the middle path being the easy mode. I always played it on normal mode or on hard mode, and I never played it on easy mode just because I didn't like the trail that easy mode was on. Like, it wasn't as fun of a journey for me. And this game did also do, even as a little kid, like I like this did a great job. Like, you started off on what didn't you start off on Cornelia
Yes.
or whatever? Like, it felt like you were kind of on a nice little journey through space, and from going to point A, point B, and all the stuff in between. Like, this game did a really good job at that.
Yeah, absolutely. When you were first playing, what was your first impression of the game? Was it surprising to you to see these 3D polygonal graphics, or had you already seen a lot of coverage for the game?
I hadn't really. I kind of knew what the game was about. It really reminded me of this. My dad had this old, like, Windows 92 computer. It might have been older, I don't know. But there's that I have no idea what it's called, but there's like a tank game for it where it was black and green, and that was it. Do you guys have any idea what I'm talking about?
Dude, I honestly couldn't tell you. Like something like one of those old Commodore games, like Joust or something like that.
Yeah, this game was it was kind of a 3D-ish game where the whole the whole landscape was black, and the only thing that made up a landscape and enemies and stuff were just green lines. And you could see mountains, like these little simple triangle mountains way off in the distance. So that way you had some sort of frame of reference when you were actually turning left or right. But then there were the enemies that would drop down, and you had to shoot them. And it kind of reminded me like Tron a little bit. Anyways, Star Fox reminded me of that game, which was a very primitive sort of 3D-ish game.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, I mean,
I can
my,
recall games similar to that, but the names of them are lost to time. I don't remember
yeah,
them
I
at
mean,
all.
it's probably something really stupid, simple, like Take Commander, like. But anyways, what I was trying to get at is, I mean, Star Fox, like, looking back on it, like when you read the history sheet on it now, it's talking about, it's the second 3D game in Nintendo's history, and it was a revolutionary game, blah blah. As a kid, I don't really like. It was cool. Like, don't get me wrong, it was definitely cool. But like, I wasn't like blown away by it. Like, I didn't like load it in and be like, "Whoa, Dad, come look at this!" Like it was just another cool game. Like, I keep in mind, I was little. I was probably, when this game came out, I was what came out in '93, so I would have been 9. And 9-year-olds don't have a grasp of what if something's groundbreaking or not. So I'll admit, like, I just kind of, I don't know. It was definitely a cool game, but it just didn't strike me as extraordinary, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's just that's what the game looked like, and you didn't think anything of it.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, and I mean, it was. I suppose looking back on it, it was kind of like an arcade quality game that you got to play in your house, which was cool. And I can't think of any games in particular, but yeah, around 92, 93, I mean, arcades were still awesome, and you can still go to Pizza Hut and play video games with your friends and stuff like that. And the arcade games were always cooler than NES games or, even platformers on Super Nintendo. Like, this was the first one that was kind of a step up from, a 2D platformer. So there was that going for it. And I feel like I'm talking too much now. Somebody else go.
Cory, what experience do you have with the game?
Not much, honestly. We were a Genesis household, so I actually got to play this mostly like if I went to like a friend's or a cousin's or something. I do remember that this was kind of different because, graphically, this was sort of like a tech demo almost, right? Like this was really the only thing out at the time that looked like this.
Mm-hmm.
You had like Super Mario and Sonic and like that old, like Tecmo Bowl and those kind of games like that, where everything's kind of 8-bit and, kind of cool and everything. But this one, visually it was like, oh, like it's got like the splash background, like you're in space or you're on the planet or whatever, and there's stuff flying past you and all kinds of pixels and stuff. And do you remember those like mind's eye videos in the 90s, like those tech demos where they would make like old VHS films and they were like a half hour long and it was like, like really bad 3D art and some sort of like music set behind it. Do you guys ever see any of those?
No.
No.
Oh man.
I'm gonna
Yeah, so
Google
like
that afterwards.
they used to do those like sorts of films. It was called like The Mind's Eye and all that sort of stuff. And that's just what it's kind of struck me as is like here's this weird thing, it's foreign to you, because you're used to seeing like Aladdin and Sonic and Mario and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Everything was kind of a side scroller, and now here's this thing where like you've got asteroids coming at you, and you've got your crosshairs, and you can blow stuff out of the sky, and it was a lot of fun, but it was just I think the main selling point was that it was different, because it's I know we're gonna get back into the future play of it, but in retrospect, it's not a very good game, like it's pretty straightforward, but
But
at the time,
yeah, and you did make a good point. Like, this was one game that things were flying at your face compared to, not.
yeah, exactly. Like most of the games that you had were very basic. Like, we've all played Paperboy and stuff like that. And this was sort of a thing like, like the old school version of MechWarrior where it's like 3D polygons and all this crap flying around and you're just like, whoa, look at all this, And I was probably about 5 or 6 at the time when I first played this. So, I was very young, but I remember, playing through it and it's like before this, you're playing on the Genesis and you had games like Rampart and you had like Airbuster and stuff like that. And
Mm.
then you get to this and it's like this is way different than any of those games. And it was really cool. And I think, this is sort of like a showcase game. And I'm glad, that kind of took off and they built a franchise around it and everything. But the original game was really short. It's like you had what, like 4 levels per difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, it wasn't a very big game, and they kind of had to cut corners as far as data goes because I think like none of your friends speak in the original games. It's all just like "Pop, pop, 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 pop," and I'm pretty sure it's like the same clip that's just sped up to different pitches for whatever person's talking. But yeah, to me it was just this foreign, kind of cool thing where it's like, whoa, like look at all this stuff exploding around you and like it was all 3D and you had, Falcon constantly like yelling at you, like, "Oh, that was my kill," like it was very interactive. Whereas, games like Mario, you kind of just bounce around and you jump on Goombas and turtles, and it's very formulaic in a way. Whereas this sort of had stuff happening, and like you were graded on like your friends, like because like
Oh
if
yeah.
Peppy or Slippy like got blown up, like you lost points for the level. So like it was just sort of that thing where it was like, oh man, this is really cool. Like I'm kind of part of this like team, and I'm flying through space, and I've got a mission, and Mario was just sort of like, go find the princess. It's like, well, why am I underwater? Like, I don't know. It looks cool. But it's like, this one's kind of like, it's actually got like a plot and sort of stuff like that. So, I mean, I remember getting down, like in my cousin's basement, and like they had like this, big cheap CRT television, and you're down there and you're playing this, and it's just like all sorts of, flashing lights and sounds, and you had like these cheap big blue lasers coming out, and it was like a lot of fun, and it was something that you really didn't see in a lot of games at the time. So that was always kind of my takeaway of it.
I think it's really interesting that you were a Genesis kid. So one question I have for you is with Nintendo, back to the NES and with the Super Nintendo as well, they kind of added chips to their games instead of doing hardware add-ons like Sega did.
Right.
So when you went back to the playground, were you ever kind of leaning back towards Super Nintendo after seeing Star Fox? Were you kind of envious of those kids, or were you still happy with your purchase of the Sega Genesis?
Well, I was the younger brother. I really didn't get much say in what system we had. But I do remember being like, oh, it'd be really cool to have one of those. And like we eventually did get, I think it was a Super Nintendo eventually, because we got like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. But we were always like the old school Genesis, like because they made several models of the machine,
Mm-hmm.
and there was like the square version with like the flip switch, and then there was the second generation where it was kind of rounded corners and the power button was a push down sort of thing. And we had that old school Saga that was like square and blocky and really heavy. And I remember being like, yeah, it'd be really cool to have a Nintendo, and I just don't think it ever really happened. I think we had one for a little while, because I do remember playing like the latest version of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's the one that sticks out for me. But a lot of it was like having to kind of like get to a friend's house and being like, oh, what do you guys have? Like, what system is in your house? And I never got a 64 either. I had to buy one like when I was in high school. So like we were kind of a PlayStation household too. But
I was going to ask if either of you had played Star Fox 64.
Yeah, I mean, by the time you get into like middle school and high school and stuff, like your friends have got all the systems that you don't. So like there was a lot of days where it's like we got to go over to Tony's house because we're gonna go play Smash Bros. But yeah, I mean, this to me was like something completely foreign, because at this point I was playing like Sonic the Hedgehog, and I was playing like Disney's Aladdin and Ronald McDonald and all those games where a lot of them were like side scrollers, and this was one of those ones where it was like you're flying through space, and it's kind of a head-on system, and everything's like flashing and exploding, and it's something that you would see on like a computer game, if you were fortunate enough to have one of those, but it's not something that you saw like outside of an arcade, really.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you brought up one game, Mech Warrior, when Chris was talking about a tank game. That's kind of what I was thinking of, because I grew up in a very PC household. We had a ZX Spectrum, and we had a Commodore 64, and we had the early Windows machines as well. And so I kind of came to the Nintendo and Super Nintendo a little later. We had an Atari, what is it? The 2600?
I believe so, yeah.
That's what I remember as like my first gaming system, kind of in addition to whatever I had on the Commodore or the Spectrum. When you first saw this game, you mentioned that it was kind of, new and different than everything else you were playing. What did your friends think of it?
I think it was this kind of the same sort of feeling. This was it was the kind of like just the new cool thing. Like, we were expecting to see more of this, honestly. Like, I think a lot of people were, a lot of my friends were like, "Oh, like, check it out. You get to fly around and you get to actually move your ship, and like, you get to do your barrel roll and everything else, and and all that sort of fun stuff." And like, I remember you could stand the ship up like on its side, and like, that was one of those things where it's like, "Oh, check out this cool trick I can do," and you get to fly around and that sort of thing. So a lot of us, I think, we were kind of expecting more of this, and I really don't know if that really panned out until later generations, like the 64 and like the Sega CD, and when the Dreamcast and the PlayStation and stuff came out.
Yeah, good call. Sean, you're the expert on Super Nintendo and stuff. Like, were there any other games that were like Star Fox on Super Nintendo?
No, not really. There was a Star Fox 2 in development that was completely finished, but it was right around the time that the N64 was ramping up for a release, and Nintendo didn't want its consumers to
stay happy.
Yeah, they have a history of that, but they didn't want their consumers to confuse, the 3D with the Super Nintendo and the 3D with the Nintendo 64. Especially when Mario 64 was coming out, and it revolutionized 3D platformers because it wrote the book on them. But as far as games like it at that time, I can't think of any.
Yeah, I can't either.
Corey, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you. I was just going to ask you about what your childhood thoughts on it were.
So, like I said, I didn't have a Super Nintendo until late in 1994, but I did have computer games, and I can recall a commercial where there's a human pilot, and there's a lot of flashing lights, and there's brief shots of gameplay of Star Fox. And at the end of the commercial, the visor opens, and the pilot has been replaced with a fox. And I may be misremembering this commercial a little bit, because it's been quite some time. But my father was like, that's not real. And when he was talking about the gameplay, he's like, the Super Nintendo can't do that. Only computers can do that. And, I'm a small child, and, I was like, yep. I'm right on board. But I did read the comic in Nintendo Power about Star Fox. And so I was really invested in the lore, what little there was about this team of, human-like animals. You have a fox, a falcon, a hare, and a toad, and they all work together in this universe as star pilots. And I was really, really invested in it, and I loved the concept. And so I cut the comics out of my Nintendo Power, so I had them all together, which I regret to this day, because if either of you have tried to get your hands on old copies of Nintendo Power, they are very expensive now.
Never tried.
It's something I've done trying to get back, a little bit of my childhood, and they are very expensive. But I loved it so much. I got my parents to help me make a 2D R-Wing out of cardboard that I painted myself with markers and stuff like that, and I put up on my wall. And up until this time, I still have not played the game. I haven't even seen it at a friend's house. But I was
already hooked.
Yeah, I was so invested in this game, even though my father was like, it's not going to look like that when it comes out. I was still ready to play it, and I wanted to really be a part of this world. So when I did get the game, I was kind of blown away by it, because I did not expect the Super Nintendo to be able to do these things. because, like you guys mentioned, up until then, we've had games like Mario and Sonic, that we have these 2D sprites that typically move from left to right. And now we have this, it's an on-rail shooter, but it felt like a real world as much as it could with, the primitive geometry of the levels.
Well, it was like a real forced perspective change, right?
Oh, yes. That's a great point, is that you are now going kind of towards the screen instead of watching, your character move and the screen kind of moving, to the right. You are now seeing things fly past you on the left and the right and above and below you.
Did either of you guys do the classic when you were playing it, when you're sitting on your butt playing it, like lean your body one way or the other to...
Oh, of course. Like, the lean is, it's scientifically proven to make the game go better.
I remember this was one of the games where I would watch like my dad or oh man, I think Jordan was real bad at it. He would like straight up like lean over as far as he could, where he was like almost like falling over. And I just remember keep saying like that doesn't help anything, right? It doesn't help anything, right? Like, but everybody does it.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of it. As a child, I didn't know the different routes, like you were talking about earlier, Chris. I didn't know that there were difficulty settings. I thought they were just different places to go. And I definitely preferred the planets to the asteroid fields. They
were cool, yeah.
Yeah, the planets felt more alive, in the sense that you had towers falling down around you. You had these gates that you had to go through, whereas the asteroid fields just felt kind of lame.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Like I like the planets. I liked seeing they did a really good job of like, you had the turf underneath your plane or your R-wing or whatever, and each planet was a little unique, but each space level was the same, no matter where you were in space. So it was cool visiting different places rather than just flying through black space.
And I think that's one of those limitations where it's like, okay, well, we've got just enough memory to make like 4 planets. So we've got to use this asteroid field and recycle it. Like, okay, well, we can put one here and one in this row and one in this row. And, we can save memory that way and just throw different enemies at.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. That's smart, though.
Yeah, and you're probably absolutely correct that it was memory limitations and probably time limitations when it came to getting the game out the door. We all know that these games are on, deadlines, and I don't really know too much about the development history of Star Fox other than what I read on Wikipedia, but that's probably correct that it is a lot easier to just recycle those asteroid fields than to come up with brand new planets.
Well, as small as these systems were back in the day, like there's definitely a history of that where you look at it and, like I was saying earlier, like all of your friends yelling at you, like whether it's, Slippy or Peppy or whatever, it's pretty much the same sound and it's just pitch shifted. And, I think Mario's got that habit too, where a lot of those noises are just different audio files that are kind of played at a different playback speed to make different sounds,
Mm-hmm.
where like people had to get really creative, back in the day for this sort of thing.
Yeah, there's absolutely a ton of those limitations, especially when you're talking about Mario, especially the original Mario, where you have, the clouds and the bushes are the exact same image. They're just colored different.
Oh my gosh, they are, aren't they?
Yeah. Goombas and the super mushroom are the same, with the exception of the Goomba's feet. Yeah, I understand there's definitely a lot of limitations that came with the game, and I'm not disparaging it. It was definitely extraordinary for its time. And I got a question for you guys. Who is your most and least favorite teammate? Cory?
Oh God, I don't think any of us like Slippy, do we? Like, Especially with the 64 version, I think we all have memories of Slippy being kind of a annoying pain. I would probably say my favorite was Peppy. Like in this one, like Falco just is always yelling at you. He's like, "Oh, that was my kill!" Like, "Oh, get out of my way, Fox!" Like, don't come at me like that, bro. I'll shoot you.
See, I was the opposite. Where I thought Falco was like the cool, tough guy, and I thought the rabbit, the hare, was the obnoxious one.
You're gonna get a lot of feedback on that one.
And
I think
then
the fans are gonna come after you.
And then Slippy, I just didn't care about.
Slippy, I didn't like Slippy, but Falco was my least favorite because he was just an ass.
I do remember as a kid, every time he's like, back off, that's my kill. I'm like, I remember, and even now, I'm like, wait, am I not supposed to kill that guy? Like, because it only like
he's just talking mad at you.
Yeah, because he chews you out when you blow up that thing that he's trying to chase. But if you let it go, which I used to do, he would never kill it. So
he's bad at his job, but he wants you to think that he's valuable, and he yells at you for it. He's like, "Oh, come on, Fox! Like, get out of here, Falco. You suck."
Yeah, when you see your teammates firing, they shoot excruciatingly slow.
Yeah,
you're just sitting there just hammering, the button with your thumb, but you see your teammates and it's just pew, pew.
Oh,
you killed my guy.
I think that's one reason why I don't like. God, what are their names again? Slippy's the frog. What's the hair?
Slippy, Falco, and Peppy, isn't it?
Peppy. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think the reason I don't like Peppy is because in the very first starting level, there's always that one scene where where I don't know about you, but like when I'm playing this game, I'm just constantly hitting the fire button. Kind of, like I have a constant stream. Yeah, I've got a constant stream of blasts going. Like that's how I aim my ship is by where I'm shooting. And there's that little dogfight where Peppy's getting nailed or something, and every time he comes straight down in the middle of your screen. So he's like, "Hey, get these guys off me," and he flies right in front of your ship. And so I'm constantly blasting him as soon as he comes in the screen, and then he gets upset about it every time. And I think that's why he always annoyed me.
Did you guys ever use your bombs during the level, or did you save those for the bosses?
I always saved them for the bosses.
I don't recall even remembering what half the buttons do, honestly, as a child. So I think that was just sort of a thing where it's like you were mashing and going like, what is this one? Oh, look at how I just blew everything up. And then you're like, why doesn't it work anymore? Yeah. Oh, there's a little tracker in the corner and you didn't realize,
Uh-huh.
I never beat this game as a kid.
What?
Yeah, even the easy difficulty, I did not beat it as a kid. I eventually just gave up and moved on to other games, or just started replaying, some other game that I had, probably Zelda, because I was addicted to that, despite beating it many, many times. But yeah, as a kid, never beat it.
Did you ever get to the last boss?
No, I could get the Venom, but then I would always end up dying. Usually, I would just I'd hit some of the geometry in the level and just get bounced around until I died.
That's fair. There's a lot of stuff coming at you later in the game. I think part of it is that, as cool as it looked, I think these controls were a little rough and ready. So it was kind of hard to get through this as a kid.
Man, I remember this game, you had to get in the swing of things in order to get successful in it. And I remember, speaking of the controls, because there were 4 control layouts that you could pick. I can never remember, since I only got to play it like 1 week in a month, I can never remember which one. I'm like, okay, is it A or is it B? Is it A or is it B? I'd start playing and be like, oh, I picked the wrong one. But like this was one of those
You'd
games
have
that
to reset because like
yeah.
your bomb was on the wrong button. You're going, why doesn't it work?
For me, it was always that I could never remember if I wanted it inverted or not inverted. And this was one of the games that I played over and over, and I played it often enough where I got the hang of the controls really well when I was a kid, and I even got to the point where like I was like where you can get the dual blasters, and then you can get like the I don't know like the what were they called, like the seed cannons or something like that. I don't know, like, where it looks like you're like lobbing snowballs. But I remember like I would get to the point where if I wasn't able to hang on to that stuff, I would just restart the game and start over again. And I had a pretty good memory of all these levels when I was a kid, where I could get really far without taking any damage at all. And if I ever like lost a wing or something, I just restarted and start all over because by the time I got to the boss, I wanted max everything.
That is something cool that you bring that up, is that the power-ups and stuff did carry over like level to level.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you kind of kept the ship that you were running with the whole time. And I don't really remember that happening too often in other games for the time frame.
And one thing I like, and comparing to power-ups for other games, normally like when you get towards the end of the game, like say you get your awesome power-up early in the game and you lose it, you know you're going to get it again eventually.
Right.
But in this game is short enough, and those power-ups are few enough and far between where if you lose it, there's a good chance you're not going to get maxed out again by the time you get to the boss. And if you fail at that boss, you're going into that final boss phase with one tiny little blaster, and you're hitting this giant face with a pea shooter rather than your giant snowballs of doom. So like it really, I got really good at keeping all the power-ups I could.
And even if you do see those power-ups, you may not necessarily be able to get to them because of what's going on in the level.
Yeah.
That was definitely an issue that I had. I didn't play it like you did, where developing that muscle memory of each map so that you wouldn't take any damage. I just I started the game and I played, and if I died, I'd just turn it off and do something else.
And in hindsight, that's probably why I always picked the same lane over and over and over, because I got to the point where like I knew those lanes and I didn't want to learn a different one.
Well, you were practicing for your future speedrunning career, of course.
Yeah. I wonder, are there speedruns of this game? Or
There's gotta be.
Yeah, but it's a real shooter, so like no matter what, like don't you get to the boss of it? Like the only difference of the speedrun is, how quickly you can kill the boss, right?
Right, and then of course there's, how fast you can mash through all the screens too.
Yeah.
And how much damage you take, if you're doing a hitless run. I haven't looked into it, but I'm sure they exist.
That would be pretty impressive. If somebody could get through Star Fox without taking a single hit, I would give them $1.
Little do you know, there's 17 guys on a board right now that have already done it.
Yeah, I'm sure if we hit up YouTube, we could find something.
Well, I would hit that like button.
All right. Do either of you have any more stories or anything else you want to share about your experience with Star Fox as a kid?
No, I think we covered it all. I mean, like I said, this was something I got to really play only occasionally, but it did stand out for me. I can say that much.
And hey, and also in hindsight, I was just trying to think if there's like any, like you talked about that commercial. Was there any merchandise for this game? Like, I don't remember seeing Star Fox posters or, T-shirts or anything as a kid. It seems like this game kind of went under the radar, but I could just be, completely wrong.
Well, it's never really been one of the flagship titles of Nintendo. It's definitely not a Mario or Zelda or even a Metroid.
Certainly not back then.
Yeah. I mean, we have the Super Nintendo release, the N64. There was a title that came out for the DS. I think it was a Command, Star Fox Command. I could be wrong. There was the re-release on 3DS, and the Wii U had Star Fox Zero, I believe, and that game was not well received.
I know. Go ahead, Bert.
Oh no, I was just gonna say. I'll admit this is the only one that I ever played.
You didn't play 64?
Nope.
See, you don't even know how to do a barrel roll.
What are you talking about? You can do a barrel roll.
You gotta press C or R twice. Come on.
You can do barrel rolls in this one. You just gotta double tap it.
Barrel roll. No, but
I was waiting for that to pop up.
I know that they did do, like, it's gotten more popular as years have gone on. I know there was a title on the GameCube, and then they did that horrible like RPG spin-off with like the characters where you're running around with like Crystal or whatever it was, and I mistakenly purchased that thinking that it was an actual Star Fox game. But like, I know it's gotten much more popular in recent years, especially because they're kind of staple characters in Smash and stuff like that. But
they made them OP in Smash, so everybody likes them again.
Yeah, Fox is amazing in Smash. That's the best character. But no, I mean, back then, I think like we'll have that discussion later.
Yeah,
but
save it for off the air.
It was this one on the Super Nintendo, and then they had the Star Fox 64, and then I don't think it really started taking off as a big franchise until after, like, Smash Bros. Honestly, where they started putting them in different franchises.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, well, I think that wraps up our impressions as kids. So let's take a quick break. Stick around. We're going to have some Star Fox music, and we will be right back. Welcome back, and we have already discussed what it was like playing Star Fox as children, and now we're going to talk about what it was like as adults. And Chris, Cory, if you don't mind, I'm going to go first.
Please do.
Okay, so I played it on the SNES Classic Edition. I don't know how authentic that is to the real deal, but it felt just like it did when I was playing it as a kid. And looking back on it now, the graphics and especially the frame rate, they have not aged very well. It's chugging along what seems like to be about 20 frames per second, which is a far cry from what we're kind of used to today, where most games are at a locked 30 FPS or usually 60 frames or higher in some cases. But I do still regard this game as an impressive feat for what it was at the time. So I'm kind of looking back with that lens. When I'm kind of thinking about this game and picking it apart today, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I thought it was annoying where you have to kind of move your ship to the side and just kind of move your aiming reticle, so you're constantly kind of fighting the reticle versus your ship. Do you guys understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's why
there's kind of that delay in distance.
And that was one of the reasons why I was always spamming the fire button, because I used the stream of my shots to show me where I'm actually aiming, the whole reticle lining up with your ship, and they kind of screw things up.
It's janky.
Yeah,
especially with an on-rail shooter where your ship just kind of gravitates to the center of the screen. You can't really do that. You have to move it out of the way to fire, but then that puts your ship in danger of hitting portions of the level or asteroids or other ships. Even though it's scripted, I really enjoy the banter and involvement with your teammates. We kind of talked about that earlier, about how some of them would come onto the scene and, ask Fox for help because there was an enemy trailing them. And if you fail to help them, they chastise you. But if you destroy the enemy, more often than not, they thank you. Except for Falco, the asshole. He never has anything polite to say to Fox. I think yeah, to me he's the Raphael of the group. And
I wonder if that's what they're going
Raphael has
for.
redeeming qualities, though.
When it comes to Ninja Turtles, Raphael is my least favorite. When it comes to Star Fox, Falco is my least favorite.
Yeah, but with Ninja Turtles, if you were in a pinch and you had to pick one Ninja Turtle to save your butt, who would you pick?
It's Leonardo.
Man, you guys are both
What'd
wrong.
you say, Corey?
I said Michelangelo.
You said Michelangelo.
Yeah, he's a party dude.
Leonardo. Leonardo leads.
I mean, Donatello is probably the correct choice because he's the smartest one, but
I was gonna say Raphael because if you had to go through wave after wave of bad guy, Raphael would be the one to get it done.
no, listen, Donatello would just build some sort of launcher that would shoot pizzas at them, and we would win.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. We'll talk about Ninja Turtles some other time.
We play Ninja Turtles.
But in Star Fox, who's the Leonardo?
It's you, obviously. It's Fox.
Yeah, exactly.
Fox
See,
McCloud.
Full circle. We're bringing it back around.
Like I was talking about earlier, one of my big pet peeves is that if you hit any portion of the geometry in the level, you're just going to bounce around like crazy, and it does a ton of damage to your ship. And so you have to be really on point, and especially in those later levels. That I can say that as an adult, I finally beat the game. But as a kid, it was thank you. Yeah, as a kid, it was just impossible. I don't know how you guys did it. But one huge redeeming quality of the game is the music. I found it to be very, very epic and almost endlessly replayable. But the boss music, to me, is the highlight. So going through each of the levels and then finally getting to the boss, and some of them have kind of a sound introduction to them. I think the first boss on Corneria, you can hear the tracks as it's coming into place, and you hear what is kind of digitized voices. They sound almost like choir voices, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
All in all, I really enjoyed this game. I loved it as a kid, even though I thought it was very difficult, never beat it. As an adult, replaying it today, I kind of look at it more as something that's important in regards to the evolution of video games, especially for Nintendo, where they have just kind of gone, how they took 3D. They went with Star Fox early on, and then eventually we had Star Fox 64, where we had a fully 3D map where we could move in multiple directions instead of the on rails that we saw. Chris, you mentioned that you never played Star Fox 64. Corey, you have. So, when they go to all range mode, you have this, arena that you can fight in. And,
oh, yeah, it's so much cooler.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that the evolution of Star Fox is important, so that's why this game is important to me. But I don't really have a whole lot to say on it. What do you guys have to talk about as adults playing it today? Chris?
Well, I think it is a wonderful game. That is a great snapshot of what 1993 had to offer. Because it is, playing it nowadays, it is a laggy, choppy eyesore that it's a bit of a mess to look at. But I love the simplicity of the controls, and they didn't really have anything in the game besides just the blaster button and the bomb button. And I mean, you can do your brake and your boost, but simple controls, clean looking game.
How often did you guys really use the brake or boost?
all the time in space. Like when you're
Oh,
going through like the little moving pillars or the columns, that was the only way to get through there without
I will
smashing your ship.
I will say probably not as much as I should have, which probably colors my opinion of the game, but
And also, like on the planets, on the like the little opening garage doors or whatever, you can use the brake or the boost to time it right, so that way that's how you get your power ups, guys. And so yeah, I use the brake and the boost quite a bit, but no, I think it's still fun to play it again. And I will admit, I have not replayed the game. I didn't get a Nintendo Switch until earlier in this year, and since I was a kid, I had not replayed this game at all until earlier this year when I played on the Switch and saw it in the library. I was like, "Ooh, I'm going to replay that," just for fun. And yeah, it was fun. Like if the game was great, I would definitely recommend people to play it. But this one, if you haven't played this one, I don't feel like you're really missing much. This is more one of those games where, if I want somebody else to play, it's because I just want them to see what it was like back in my day when I was a kid and video games were new. Like, it's not like Mario, where Mario feels timeless. This game is definitely has an age on it.
I would
well,
agree to that.
Mario's like a whimsical thing too, you know.
Yeah, but still, I mean, even like Super Mario, like those games are smooth and the controls just feel right. And like you can pick up Super Mario or Mario 3 after years of not playing it and go up right where you left off. And I genuinely feel like I've got a 5-year-old. I feel like in 5 years, he can find enjoyment out of playing Mario games. Whereas this game, he'll probably just be like, really? Do, do we really have to play this one? Like,
Yeah, I
uh,
can see that. That especially for the younger generation, this game might be a little hard to get into. Especially like I was talking about because the frame rate is just appalling.
yeah.
Um, when you look, as kids, we didn't think about these things, but as adults, it's very noticeable when virtually every other game out there is at that lock 30 FPS or running at 60 frames per second.
Yeah, and replaying it as an adult, it kind of like I know everybody uses the word eyesore, like overuses it, but this game kind of is an eyesore because of that. It strains my eyes because of like the little how choppy it is and everything. So it's a good screenshot of 1993.
It's a good
What
call.
about what about you, Corey?
You know, I'm of a mixed feeling on the matter. I believe that in terms of if I were to sit down and play this and have fun with it, it's not. It's not something you can do, you know. I mean, it plays pretty poorly. It's not very fun. I played this on the SNES Mini because I'm a cool kid, but uh, honestly, it's not something I would recommend to friends or family or anyone for that matter. If you're not playing this for the nostalgia factor, it's really not worth it.
Yeah,
Visually, I don't think it's that bad. You know, especially you look at other titles like Descent, Mech Warrior, things of that nature that were in the same kind of vein. This one holds up. You really can't expect much of it, but they did use like the old school like matte painting backgrounds, so it still looks fine in my opinion. It's cheap and it's old and it's fun, but um musically I do think that, you touched on this earlier. I think the music is probably some of the best um parts about this.
oh
But
for sure, yeah,
yeah, like you're saying, like the frame rate's garbage, and your allies really don't help you at all. They're kind of just there to give you this sense of squadron based gameplay. And if I was going to play some sort of flight simulator game, especially like a retro one, I'd obviously lean towards something like X-Wing or TIE Fighter, or, one of those old school games where you actually had way more freedom because as we've said, this is a rail shooter, and there's a bit of delay where, you're kind of having to move your ship and you have to really move your target reticle first. And it's hard. It's hard to enjoy. It's hard to embrace, other than to say like, oh, I played this as a kid and it was really cool. And, like it was this new and exciting thing. And this was sort of I think this was sort of a tech demo where, this was really pushing the limits of what you could see as far as, this is what we can do with the Super Nintendo. But, you really didn't get this kind of content anywhere else outside of arcade machines and computers and stuff. But as far as, them showcasing the graphics and everything, other than that, I think it was kind of something that they were really pushing on visuals and not so much gameplay and anything else. So, I think they were pushing the envelope on this one as far as what they could do graphically, and they were not interested in really making like a big sweeping game. So it's really hard to say that it holds up well.
That's fair.
Yeah, and that is a good point, and maybe that explains why the game itself was so short. Because, I have not timed myself when I played it, but I swear you could easily beat this game under half an hour.
Oh, yeah, it's like a 20-minute thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, or 20 minutes or less. And there's the 3 paths, which really, and there's no content. It's not like Mario, where once you beat it, then it turns into, there's like a different version of it. You know what I mean? Like, this game is a really short game. I don't know. Maybe they just had to keep it short just because of how packed full of stuff it was, as far as like the graphics and the 3D engine and all that stuff.
Yeah, there's only so much room, on those boards. So that does make a lot of sense for the brevity of the game. The audio, there's a lot of tracks on here. So that definitely takes away from space as well.
Oh, hey, can we all address the big stupid face at the end?
You mean my boy Andros, the champion of Polygon Warriors?
Yeah, I mean, like you're flying through space and all these different planets, and then all of a sudden you get to this trippy psychedelic trip, like where like the background gets all swirly and weird.
I mean, come on! Did you think you were gonna fight a cool ship? No, you're gonna fight the Face Lord.
Yeah, and then when you beat him, it's a box, a pixel box. It looks like a Windows screensaver, with a monkey face in it. Like,
yeah, he's the best. He's the champion. You gotta fight him.
Okay, well, as long as that's addressed, I'm done. Oh, and that's stupid. Every time you shoot him, now,
the best. No, I mean, there's certainly things about this that are fun, in terms of nostalgia and everything else. But I think it was a pretty rough cut, honestly.
Yeah.
Was this a 16-bit?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there you go. Like that, it was pretty revolutionary for its time, but I don't think it really holds up well.
You can get off of like Etsy or eBay, you can get repro carts that have overclocked the FX chip, I believe, and you can actually run the game at a higher frame rate, and it's smoother from what I've seen. But I don't feel that's enough really to kind of justify the cost of getting the cart.
Are you telling me that there's jailbroken copies of Star Fox out there?
Yep.
That's amazing.
If they add this to the App Store, I would play this on my phone, assuming they fix the frame rate.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they put it on the App Store, they'd probably just put a new engine behind it. But it's it's something else, man.
Yeah, if I have to recommend somebody the Star Fox series, I'm going to recommend the 3DS Star Fox 64 3D. I feel that that's probably the best entry point, and it looks, Star Fox 64 is a great game, but it looks amazing, in 3D on 3DS.
Well, Star Fox 64 also had Versus mode, which was, I mean, let's be realistic here, the best.
See, now I feel like I'm missing out.
You are, unfortunately. You know, if you had 4 controllers and a Nintendo 64 and Star Fox, then most of your time was probably spent in that versus mode.
It's probably right up there with GoldenEye, in my opinion.
Really?
It was a lot of fun. I mean, because like we were talking about, you know, when you get into the 64 era, it was very open environment. You weren't really on a rail anymore. So they kind of had these little, you know, cityscapes that you could play in, and they were, you know, not very big level, but they were big enough, and you're flying around and shooting your friends.
Dude, that sounds great.
It's a lot of fun. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up. For anyone out there, you can follow us on Twitter at ReviewByte. That's Review BYTE. You can follow the podcast on iHeartRadio if you just search for Superannuated Starman. Chris, Cory, thank you very much for your time. Cory, especially, you're an amazing guest, and we'd definitely like to have you back on sometime.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Go ahead and call me up whenever you're doing this. You know, especially if you're going to do some of the old Genesis stuff. I'll school you guys on the old school, like Ronald McDonald's Treasure Hunt.
Yeah, haven't played that game. I did have a Genesis when I was a kid though, so that is something that I want to get into. And Chris and I are working together about how he's going to start playing some Genesis games. And for the next episode, we're looking at playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time for the Super Nintendo.
The best.
Also for the arcade.
Yeah, we're also going to talk about the arcade version as well.
And losing all your quarters.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's going to be it. Until next time, thank you all very much, and hope to see you again. Bye.